classroom management theories. The reason I say this is because when you look at behavior management in general, and you look at this keyword of behavior management, what generally tends to happen is that we are looking at basically the relationship with the teacher forms with the students in the class and how you arrange, manage, and let's say basically arrange and manage the classroom in a way wherein it helps create a conducive atmosphere for the for the children or for learners to be motivated. You try and avoid any conflicting situations, and you try and set expectations, and you let I'll put it this way: you work out activities and some of the resources that you use to be able to conduct your session in the class. You kind of organize these resources in such a way that it promotes working in groups or promotes teamwork. And essentially, the idea is using all these tools. You are looking at primarily creating a classroom wherein you can say that there is a good classroom management which is happening because all these things would help promote a positive behavior from children in the class, and it will help them engage, help them interact. It'll help them in terms of working together, so keeping them motivated. So when we talk about behavior management in general, and we look at some of the theories which are related to what we study in general in human relations, not specifically for teaching, but these behavioral management theories come across from theories and work which has been carried out in understanding human relations. And they, when applied to the teaching side of things, are related to helping us manage and create a classroom with conditions which are conducive for the purposes of learning. And that is where, to a certain extent, what we would say is that they would be helping us in creating a classical, let's say, environment for the teaching and learning to happen. And when we look at these theories in particular, we also look at how we will essentially be focused on, let's say, with the use of these theoretical frameworks and models, create an environment which is inclusive. That means the teacher has the understanding of the cultural requirements, the educational requirements, the requirements in terms of prior skills or experience, and obviously uses them to further promote the process of learning by application of some of these theories in terms of classroom management. So when we talk about specifically children in particular in primary school, one of the things that you would generally see is that teachers do not they do not have a way. They have a way. Let's put it this way: to try and avoid they try and avoid not to be angry with this with the children that they are teaching, and there is a way that they try and create or elicit these behaviors which is required for children to be able to follow. So for example, if you've not done something, if you've not done your homework, or if you've not been able to participate in the activity, obviously one way could be that you could obviously say, for example, let's put it this way: I wouldn't use the word punish, but you would probably look at giving some special attention to that child in terms of why you've not been able to do this. Say, for example, an activity like drawing out something as an art activity, and we would try and then understand what are the reasons in terms of why the kid has not been able to let's say work with others or by themselves to be able to participate and at least do that activity. And in such cases, sometimes when we investigate further and go into it, we understand behavior management. We understand how does it feel for the child in terms of whether the child has understood the instructions, whether they feel safe or not. Do they need any special adjustments in terms of carrying out or participating in that activity? And in some cases, you would also be looking at specific needs and requirements because, for all I know, sometimes these things are discovered as we go along in terms of finding out if there are any, special needs which a child has to be able to participate in those activities. And that is where the role of this classroom management tends to come in. So when we talk about these range of behavioral theories in particular, they would be related to understanding the psychological and I would say um, um, say, for example, psychological and also the classroom management side of things, which are required to be put in place to be effectively able to teach and deliver a particular session, or, work with kids or work with your learners. And some of these theories which have been worked on by different and proposed by different, people over the years, Frederick Jones, as we would look at, Albert Bandura, that we would look at, some of them, and Jean Piaget, if we look at, they have come up with these theories primarily after a lot of work and experimentation which has been done through observations and through carrying out these studies, and then at some stage they have become what are called theories which can relate to some sort of learning within a classroom based environment. And when we do talk about some of the recent theories, for example, Jean Piaget's theory of constructivist learning, which was in the early 80s, we look at some of the theories which were proposed by William Glasner, which are reality and choice theories in the 90s, late 1990s. You generally see that they have these theories and these bits and pieces of work that we look at as required for managing behavior within a classroom. They have been in continuous work. That means it's not that something was studied a good 20, 30, 40 years back and that's been adopted and understood, and now it is a norm that we will use it when we do face some of these situations. No, but there has been continuous work which has been happening, and a lot of people, including when it started off in the early 19th century or early 20th century rather, John Dewey, which initiated some of these studies which was related to classroom behavior and behavioral management in general. His work and the work that he has done over the years has laid the foundation for a lot of others that we see. Skinner, for example, in the 1950s. And then we go on to Bandura, which is probably the late 1990s, the latest of these theories which have been proposed and how they've been adapted over the years from what work John Dewey had done. And all of this is related to behavioral management. And why do we look at that? Is because what we want to do is make sure that children or learners feel safe within your class. You're able to develop by understanding their behavior and what makes them tick, essentially in creating what is called an inclusive learning environment. And then you need to reflect on how these theories or theoretical models of behavioral theory help you in better maintaining classroom management when you are teaching and delivering in the class. So there are 3 or 4 keywords in this particular learning outcome that we need to focus on. One is behavior management, which will finally be related to what is helping us do a better classroom management with the understanding of these theories and understanding how what kind of behavior, what kind of attitude, and obviously what makes our learners tick when they are in the class. The second point would be looking at how does it help you in creating a safe learning environment within your classrooms. So all learners feel safe, they feel they can participate, they feel they are going to contribute, they feel that they are motivated. Whichever ways you put it across, things like motivation, avoiding any situations of conflict, making sure that the classroom and the way the activities are set are meeting the expectation of the learners, and it allows them to, in general, interact and work in teams. Those would and take away all any sort of fear that they might have when we look at organizing these activities or working through in the classroom, is related to the fact that we want to look at using some of these theories and understanding from these theories to look at how we can create a safe environment for children or learners within our classroom. And the third bit is going to be looking at inclusivity in terms of your teaching and learning, inclusivity in terms of, essentially ensuring that you take into account and you work with all the learners, you understand the cultural requirements, resource requirement, any specific requirements of learners, whether it's because of disability or their needs, and in some cases also understand their background and educational background, their personal and cultural background, to be able to better understand and connect with the learners or children in the class, which allows you to, look at a better classroom management as far as the process of teaching and learning is concerned. So these three assessment criteria that we focus on, one of them is looking at behavior theories and how it helps you in maintaining better classroom management. The second one is looking at how these theories help you create a safe and inclusive learning environment. And the third one is a bit of a reflection to look at how do you relate it to your own practice, area of practice. And in this, in your own area of practice, how do you look at the use of these management theories, behavioral theories, not management, sorry, behavioral theories to better and effectively manage a class and ensure that your teaching and learning is inclusive. You ensure that the learners feel safe, motivated, there are no conflicting situations, and the sessions and the planning that you do in terms of activities using the resources that you plan for a particular session or a lesson, I would say, meet the expectation of the learners or your learners, especially say kids, children, or students in the class. So three assessment criteria, and the focus primarily of understanding these behavioral theories is predominantly to look at helping us create a better classroom management from a point of view of imparting teaching and learning or covering anything that you're related to doing your sessions within the class. Now, there are lots of theories, and these theories, when we talk about behavioral theories or behavioral theories specifically, which have been let's say, which have come up, and there is a lot of work which has been done behind them. We start off with, Skinner's theory, which is B.F. Skinner, and he, essentially, in the early 1950s, proposed this particular theory of behaviorism within the class, wherein he said that behaviors are learned through interaction within the environment, and there are undesirable behaviors that can be changed through reinforcement and consequences. So one of the experiments that he had carried out was that if you have some learners interact and work within a particular set of environment with certain environmental conditions, they would generally exhibit behaviors which will be particular to that particular situation. So an example here would be, if I put a lot of kids together in a group and ask them to do an activity, external activity, and play outside, you generally see that they will come out quite positive and quite pumped up and charged when they come inside the classrooms. They will take a bit of time to settle down and then get used to the routine in terms of what they're doing. So if I say physical activity and if I say mental activity, and if we divide them into two groups, you generally see, because of the environment they are in and the resources that they get to carry out those activities, their way of thinking and the behavior that they would show would be slightly tuned to the environmental conditions in which they are, being asked to work or, undertake those activities. So his assumption relied, when he proposed this theory, his I would say the experimentation that he did relied on the assumption that the best way, if we have to look at modifying behavior, was to modify the environment. And that would essentially give you the outcome that you need from students or from your learners or from children when you want them to exhibit certain type of behavior within a particular setting. So he was a stark proponent of instructional strategies. That is where he said that, what we do get to see in, what has been adopted in the modern day education system is that we need to look at, doing things in bite-sized chunks or progressive way. And that would be to look at ensuring, and a word that we normally use right now in education is scaffolding. And the reason why we use this is because what we want to be able to do is, if we want to accomplish something big, we have to give instructions. We have to do that in small chunks, and we have to repeat those in order to ensure that they are being followed. And then we review them to ensure that this is being done to the let's say the correct standards to be able to achieve that particular outcome. And this approach of scaffolding that we generally get to see, which has been adopted now in schools, primary, secondary, and even in education in general, seems to come from what initially Skinner actually proposed. And his proposition was that if we have to modify behaviors, we have to modify the environment. That's the crux that he initially, proposed. Then we look at the second theory, which is basically the cognitive behavioral theory. Now, CBT, as it is called, this one was basically carried out, and it suggests that there is a link between understanding and how you get to the final requirements. So when you have to look at let's say going on a particular let's put it this way as an example. If I look at the example of, say, for example, a activity that I want to carry out, and that activity that I want to carry out within the class is based on a certain idea. Now, when we look at that idea and we look at the situation in terms of how the classroom has been organized, what we need is certain specific behaviors to be, shown by our learners. And in such cases, what will happen is, if we do feel that if the instructions are not clear, then depending on how the learners actually interpret the instructions, there would be an outcome for that particular activity. So sometimes what we have to do is we have to lead by example. We have to understand the emotions, say, for example, the behavior, along with behaviors, understand the emotions and the thought process of our learners. And that is where this particular theory comes in, because this theory puts its focus on, when it was proposed by Beck in the early 1960s, it basically puts a focus on thoughts, emotions, and body sensations. That is the bit which basically Beck studied. And he said that, if we know what our thoughts and actions are going to influence how we feel and how we behave, then it is important for teachers to understand the thoughts and actions, because they would then finally be having an effect on what behavior is shown by the children or by their learners in a classroom-based setting. So his approach was looking at aiming to change how we look at thinking and the thinking thought process, essentially, and that would look at showing certain type of behaviors which would essentially be required when you're looking at asking them to participate or do an activity, or basically be involved in the process of teaching and learning. And this particular theory, when he demonstrated this, was based on the fact that we need to understand and get to understand if learners have any sort of mental health issues, and if these issues are there, then they need to be recognized. You need to put let's say solutions in place, and that would allow then you to look at changing how they think and their thought process, and that would allow you to get the required behavior which is required from these learners, students, children in the class to be able to accomplish those activities. Then we look at the third theory, which is Albert Bandura's theory. And in this particular theory, when we look at Bandura's work and the way he looked at the process of learning, teaching and learning, he said that the process of learning is a social process. And he based his work on what is called the social learning theory, which is basically related to the personality of the person. So he proposed that people learn from one another via observations, via imitation, and via modeling. This is the main crux of his theory. So his theory is based on social learning, and he said that people learn from one another via observations, imitation, and modeling. And his theory is often also a bridge between what is the behaviorist theory and the cognitive learning theories, because it encompasses things which include things like attention, paying attention, grasping of things that is related to memory and retention, and how much learners are motivated. When I say learners, children, learners, kids are motivated to stay in that class or in that activity. And that is where the ability to be able to understand and work.
Sorry, what did you say? Which two theories did you say it was a bridge between?
It's a bridge between the behaviorist theory and the cognitive learning theories. So these two, so his work was to say that we need to be able to understand and create an environment wherein learners are able to work together in teams. They are able to let's say, trust each other. And when this development of closer working relationship happens, then learners are able to learn via the process of observation, imitation, and modeling. So the crux of his theory is based on his main work was that when we look at the process of learning is based on the theory of personality, and obviously here people learn by observing, by imitating others. If they feel that these practices somebody else is doing is something which is creating a positive attitude or positive outcome, they would try and do imitation and follow it up, and obviously then follow it up and then put it through in their own, or basically adapt it and then obviously do it in the way that they think would bring out that positive behavior. Now, there are lots of these theories. So one of the other is assertive discipline theory, which was developed by Lee and Marlene Cantor. Now, these theories are in a way structured and provide a very systematic approach of how a teacher would control the classroom. So how would you organize resources? What kind of activities would you do? And there are very clear remits in terms of, or boundaries given in terms of how you would organize some of these to ensure that the outcome is always a predicted outcome that you want to achieve. And this particular theory obviously looks at consistency from a point of view of helping to elicit or get positive and negative behaviors from children or from their learners. So when we talk about this assertive discipline theory, it talks about the rules and behavioral expectations which must be clearly stated and enforced by the teacher when you are actually doing your class. So in such cases, what will happen is, if you see sometimes when you are in under examination conditions, there are very clear do's and don'ts given, and normally a leaflet or some sort of an instruction leaflet is given by the teacher when you're taking an exam, that this is something which is allowed, this is something which is not allowed. And because you are clearly stating that at the start of it, what that will also be related to what kind of expected behavior the children or learners would show when they are in that situation or under that control situation. So here the expectations essentially need to be clearly stated and then reinforced by the use of activities, resources, or in case of obviously carrying out the activities within the classroom. So classroom management tends to be a process wherein, I would put it this way, wherein that would mean that the teachers would essentially ensure that let's put it this way, when I use carrot and stick approach, so what I want to say is there are consequences for certain actions that you show which will be positive, and there will be consequences of certain actions which will be rewarded if you show these in that context, because very clearly we have stated that these are the rules and these are the things that you do, and if you don't do this, you'll get, say, you'll face consequences, but if you do this, there are positive rewards or positive consequences of that outcome, of that behavior. So we segregate, according to Lee and Marlene, behaviors which are basically positive behaviors and negative behaviors. For positive behaviors, you reward the learners, and for negative behaviors, they have to have consequences. That means they will need to fall in line and understand this is something which is not allowed to be done. And if you do this, then there are classroom rules for it, and those have to be enforced. And in such cases, for example, a simple thing would be, if you're late to a class, you normally miss that class. If you're late to a class 5 minutes or something like that, depending on how these rules are enforced in the school. For example, in some schools, you would generally, let's say, for example, during breaks, I don't know in terms of how do I put this across, but in general, I would say, if you're a teacher and you're in primary school or secondary school, I think there are very clear rules enforced that, okay, the school starts at 9. If you're late, you mark late, and that's a behavior that or an outcome that you have to face. If you've reached late and you have not informed the school why you've reached late, you will be marked late, and that is an expectation which is expected from the child. and it is stated already in the rules or regulations, and it is enforced if it is not followed.
So I've got an example there. So a couple of my students, they're a bit older and they're teenagers, so it's probably harder for them to get up. So what my form tutors kind of enforced is that if they're late, I don't know how many times it is in the week, and then she's agreed with parents that she can start taking some time back off their break.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a good example, and I think I'm struggling to bring a few across because obviously trying to relate it to school, wherein classroom management or the reason why we do classroom management is primarily because we want certain behaviors to be shown more than the negative side of things, and in such cases, one such example that I thought of was time management, and I think there could be others in terms of when you have playtime or when you have break time, and these behaviors are reinforced because they are already stated as rules or some sort of regulations, and everybody in the teaching side enforces it to ensure that children and let's say children in particular understand this, and that is where the assertive discipline side of things, which Lee and Marine actually proposed, is how you put this in place within a particular setting. So there are rules, and those rules elicit some sort of behavior, and that behavior is reinforced because it has been stated to a certain extent that this would be the outcome, and then you enforce those outcomes to ensure that everybody falls in line, and there is a certain pattern which emerges out of it when we look at that. So there are lots of other theories which have also been proposed, and there are theories from William Glasner, which was basically related to reality and choice theories, wherein students have a choice and they need to be aware of their responsibility in terms of how and what they do in terms of making decisions, and these decisions can then have a bearing on the behavior that they can learning or behavior that they show within the classrooms. And it is a choice at higher end. Say, for example, when we look at secondary school or sixth form, there the students have a choice that if they choose to, say, for example, go with a particular curriculum and decide that this is what I need to follow through, then there is an ownership that they need to have in the process of learning, and that also then helps the teachers, because in that case the teacher and the student have ownership, joint ownership, and obviously for that particular joint ownership there are certain expected behaviors which the students need to show in secondary school when they, say, for example, pick up science, humanities, arts, or any such discipline. They would need to do extra lessons or attend, for example, tutorials or do extra classes, and that is to you know basically look at taking responsibility in terms of and exhibiting, let's say, greater level of control in terms of their behavior, so that they are able to learn and obviously go through that particular curriculum because they have actually made that choice. So there are these there are, I think, about 11, as I mentioned to you, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 theories that I know of, which are between behavioral theories, cognitive learning theories, social learning theories, and human learning theories that we generally see. But what we want to be able to do is, out of these, we want to talk about the key 4 or 5 theories which would be related to what are called classroom, or help us in managing the behavior and look at a better classroom management. And that is where I would say these theories would be important, rather than looking at all of them in this particular context. Now, with the basic understanding of these theories, so what I will do is I'll upload a handout for you, which is like a very, very short summary that I have gleaned from University of Cumbria's handout, and that particular handout of 2 or 3 pages basically summarizes these important theories, which are theories that we should be aware of as teachers, or as tutors, instructors, lecturers, whatever you call it, which will help us in better classroom management. And there is no one universal explanation of these theories and how they work. I think some of them border on to also us understanding, social learning, also border on our understanding of psychological influences of how these theories help in better classroom management. And to a certain extent, what we need to be able to do is understand these theories and the rationale behind them, because in some cases they would be coming out of a different field, which is social learning or human relations, but they can be applied in the context of education, specifically when you are clear with the context. So our context here is, we're looking at better classroom management, we are looking at creating a safe classroom, we are looking at inclusive teaching and learning. And in those cases, what you would look at is primarily focus on some of these theories which can be related, or we can create some sort of a direct relation with how they help us in managing the behaviors of our learners, whether it's kids, children, students, or learners in sessions or classrooms that we teach and deliver. Or when I say a session, I mean online. And when you say a lesson, I would mean classroom, brick and mortar model, wherein you teach them and you are physically interacting with them, and teaching and delivering a particular, let's say, a particular part of your lesson from the scheme of work. Now, with that basic understanding, what we want to be able to do is go into some of the assessment criteria. So the first one talks about analyzing the behavior of management, theories. So here, what I would primarily want you to look at is, although there are 11, 12, 13, or 14 theories, the idea would be here to look at only the relevant ones, which I think are directly going to have an influence on classroom management or behavior management within a particular classroom. And how do they help you in influencing student behaviors to create what is called a safe, inclusive, positive, motivated, or say, for example, an environment wherein you're looking at no conflicts, and you're able to set clear expectations, so that at the end of the class, at the end of the session, you're able to achieve and meet those goals and objectives which are there on your lesson plan for that session. So what I've done is, I've drawn up a table from a point of view of some of the theories I feel are relevant to classroom management. And these are the 5 that I've covered in the slides initially to discuss and give you a bit of an overview. So we've looked at the behaviorist theory from Skinner, cognitive behavioral theory from Albert Ellis and Aaron Beck, social learning theory from Albert Bandura, assertive learning from Lee and Marlene, and restorative practices. That one I missed out. Restorative practices, the last one, which is primarily focused on building and restoring relationships and community instead of taking any punitive measures. That means you don't look at any sort of punishments or look at any sort of a stick approach. What you tend to do is you tend to build a sense of community and responsibility among students. And that is what, both Howard and Ted actually proposed, saying that focusing on the benefits of building a positive relationship rather than looking at punitive measures or punishments would elicit a better behavior from your students or learners. And that would be looking at resolving any conflicts, meeting the expectation, and obviously building dialogue or group dynamics amongst your learners when they are doing activities or when they are present in the class and you give them some activities, or when you do discussions with them, and that will help you create a positive learning environment. So these 5 theories is what we need to analyze. Now, analysis of these theories primarily would involve we building some arguments around it, basis our experience of if we are able to use any of these theories and relate it to our classroom delivery or classroom management that we do on a day-to-day basis. So it is not important for you to look at all the theories, but having some sort of a table that I've provided might be good to cover this, because it talks about analyzing theories rather than a theory. So it is plural. So you'll have to look at one or two that you think you are able to use, and you use it or relate it to the way you teach and deliver in a classroom, and that helps you in organizing the classroom activities with your learners in a much more better or organized way. So what I've done here is, if I look at application of this particular theory at my end, what I tend to primarily look at is look at theories that I can relate to in terms of, when I teach and deliver, I look at, kind of depending on wherein I try and work with learners in a way wherein we are trying to give them also responsibility and ownership. So my case, I would look at reality and choice in terms of what is the situation of the learners in terms of whether they're working with family, kids, and how much time they can logically spend on, say, for example, studying with us through live lectures. And in those cases, the reality and choice theory of William Glasner comes into play, because what I tend to do is I tend to make my learners aware of their responsibility and their decision, that this is their decision that they want to study the course. And as a result, I would expect from them is that they do a bit of self-study every session, after every session for 2 to 3 hours. And this would give them the, ability to own how they are actually going through in the journey of, teaching and learning with me in terms of learning a particular unit or going through a particular module in the course. And this ownership between the two, between the teacher in terms of me teaching and delivering and looking at doing tutorials, but in terms of the learner doing a bit of self-study, builds a bit of ownership on their side and participation, and that allows for them to, say, for example, have to a certain extent, I would put it this way, higher self-esteem. And in my case, it allows me to exhibit greater level of, delegation, because what I can then do is, after a lecture, say, okay, you look at these handouts, go through them in a bit more detail, study this article or this case study, and that will help you, realize that, okay, this is the important thing which was required related to this learning outcome and indicative content to be covered. And this particular approach of, let's say, although I'm doing it online, but this particular approach, if I relate it to classroom management, helps me create a environment wherein the learners have ownership. So learners and the teachers, between the two of us, we have joint ownership. There is a sense of pride and self-esteem with the learners that they are in control of what they are learning and how they are learning. And at the same time, this allows them enough space or enough time to be able to, constructively learn what I'm actually trying to deliver using a particular session online. So what I would then do is, as I've explained, that you would need to look at identifying with one or two particular theories, and then put examples of why do you think this is a theory that you use in better managing your classroom when you are delivering, and that would help do the analysis. So here, in general, what I'm trying to say is you have to relate to one or two theories that you think that you use in the class when you're doing teaching and learning, and that helps you in bringing out the positive behaviors which you require from your learners. That helps you, or helps the learners participate more, engage more in the sessions that you're doing, in the activities that you're carrying out. And last but not the least, at the end of the day, all this is moving them closer to what is required to be achieved as a goal and objective. So in my case, completing the unit, achieving the unit. In your case, depending on, again, some goals and objectives which have been set as per the curriculum plan, allowing them to achieve those, goals and objectives. And these theories would help you understand why this is something that you are putting in place, because you're able to relate to it. So in most cases, when I look at, for example, theories that they would put into place specifically in schools, you would probably be looking at, social learning theory. So here you would straight away go across and relate maybe to Bandura's theory, which basically talks about learning happens if you create that environment wherein people are able to work together, or in this case, children are able to work together, they become friends with certain other children, or and they are able to relate. They have a relationship, positive relationship, or a vibe between them, and that allows them to follow some of the things that others are doing, either by observation, by imitation, or by modeling. And that allows, and the main goal of the teacher in that case is to create that particular environment, which basically allows the aspect of this social learning to happen, which is where learners can learn from observing, imitating, and obviously modeling some of the other behaviors which they see from other children. And that allows them to not only get attention, but allows them to essentially retain what is being said and taught. And last but not the least, because they see others. When I say others, I mean they see other children doing it successfully, completing it successfully, getting rewarded for it, or getting a pat for it, saying, "Well done, you've done this. You've achieved. You've done this." They also see the motivation in terms of exhibiting those behaviors, and that is where you would probably put that as a bit of an example, in order to cover this particular, assessment criteria. Is that okay?
Yep.
Now, in the second one, we are looking at relating these behavioral theories, or behavioral management, class management theories, to how it helps in creating what is called a safe and inclusive learning environment. So when we do talk about, how do we establish a safe and, inclusive learning environment, we look at some of the basic strategies that I would normally look at would be things like, in classrooms, if I am doing a session online, I would have basic, housekeeping tips, which I would normally say, or give out to my learners when they're attending sessions, to say, okay, if you're not asking questions, keep your mic muted. You can ask me a question through the chat room, or if you feel that I'm going too fast, or you do not understand anything, please feel free to ask me questions. And those are basic minimum, things which I'm explaining to our learners, so that they have a very clear understanding of how things are going to be working. If they have an issue or a problem, how they would ask that, raise it, and then how would that be resolved. So you're defining some sort of, I would say, standards for what kind of behavior you want your learners to show, say specifically in my case, when we do online lessons. So similarly in the class, when you look at creating inclusive strategies, or how do you say my teaching is inclusive, you're looking at defining certain basic standards of what kind of behavior would be expected or tolerable. You would probably enforce these standards by saying, okay, if this is to happen, then this is the outcome, or if you do this, then this is something which could be a consequence that you face. You would also look at, obviously, in some cases, when we start doing the sessions, we would then, in some cases, use what is going back to, the approach which I would say John Dewey proposed, which is scaffolding. So you would go into, if we are looking at, certain bits in terms of topics, and looking at, from a point of view of delivering something which is a topic that I need to cover across the week. What I would do is primarily, break that down in what is called, the smaller chunks, which is something, in terms of instructions, what I would make them clear first, and then at some stage these instructions would be broken down into, I would say, some sort of, smaller chunks for delivery, and then I would repeat these instructions to ensure that they are understood, and then they are being followed in order to achieve that particular outcome. So depending on how you manage, and build inclusivity in your classrooms, you are sometimes also aware of, say, specific needs of a child. You're also looking at providing opportunities to all children, because sometimes when we have learners in the class, they have different caliber, different, background, and obviously a different set in terms of their knowledge and experience. So what you do is you provide opportunities to all the learners, so that they feel that they are not left behind, or they are not being, given enough opportunities to participate. But the other way around, what you would do is basically start with some of the ones which, um, you'd probably rotate and ask questions when you say, okay, now any questions, and if somebody raises a hand, you'd probably give opportunities to all students across the session, and that would be saying that you're looking at providing equal opportunities to children or your learners when you are managing the class, or when you are asking, giving them an option to ask questions. Now, the other bit that we look at in terms of, when we talk about safe, so how do you create a safe learning environment? And when we look at safe learning environment, and we talk about inclusive learning environment, but generally say, how do you create a safe learning environment? Here is where we would be talking about, essentially some factors like, how would the students feel, how would they share their feelings, what kind of values, or they believe in, what these values elicit in terms of attitudes, how they express opinions. Sometimes you have kids who are quite shy in the class. There are some of them are quite bold, and they are quite vocal in terms of expressing their feelings. You would generally see that sometimes, people or children in this case, when they talk about certain things, or if they are too talkative, they would kind of attract some sort of negative feedback, or in some cases there would be a reinforcement from the teacher to say, you need to maintain this behavior, or you need to do this, or you cannot do this. So what we want to be able to do is, primarily when you look at safe learning environment, we are essentially going to be talking about, how do we make the kids feel that they are able to openly express their feelings. They are able to share their feelings. They are able to, explore different values and attitudes. And in some cases, without any fear, express opinions, which, sometimes can attract, I would say, negative feedback, or some sort of a negative response from the other learners or children in the class. So when we talk about safe classrooms, we are talking about 5 or 6 different aspects. One of them tends to be psychological safety. That means you're looking at making sure that in the classroom there is a constructive and an open dialogue which can be promoted amongst your children or the learners which are in the class. And they should feel safe that whatever opinion they express, whether it's bad, good, a positive, negative, there is a way that they can express it without having to feel, that there would be some sort of a rebuttal, or somebody. Sometimes you see that when people ask questions, or children ask questions in the class, there could be a very basic question, but other kids sometimes start laughing. What is he asked, or what is it that he has spoken, and that is something which should have been understood. So they should not feel that fear that I'm going to be, let's say, ridiculed, or in some cases, I would be seen as somebody who's asking basic sets of questions as against um, what is required. And those would come across, from a point of view of looking at creating a safe environment. Now, when you look at your own field, which is PHSC, as you normally do, sometimes when you're handling complex situations, that is where you're required, I think, to create what is called a safe learning environment. So, in such cases, when you're dealing with situations wherein, say, for example, you have students who feel that they cannot express their opinion. They feel some sort of a fear that if I say this, or if I express that, I would be laughed on, or I would, be not seen by my other, friends in a similar way. Then in such cases, what the teacher would need to do is be more encouraging, to start an open discussion. And in that case, what you're seen as helping the students or that particular child feel, psychologically safe to say that, okay, if I express this, if I say this, there's nothing wrong about it, and it is something that I can do, and I can openly do that with my teacher. And in such cases, that would allow you to handle, say, for example, a complex issue which could be related to a particular student which might have a special need or a disability, or in some cases not have the confidence to be able to express that opinion. And in those cases, what you're looking at is creating an environment which is safe, and in which the learners, or in this case, I would say children, feel safe that they are going to be reasonably understood, and there is not going to be any sort of abuse or harassment or any other such sensitive issues, and the teacher would understand their opinion, and that would help build that trust. And that trust would essentially provide what is called the psychological safety net to the child to be able to openly express and discuss things that they would want to with the teacher. Now, there could be other bits in terms of, safe environment. When we say, you would look at cultural sensitivity, and here what we are looking at is you're ensuring that sometimes when you pick examples or give examples in the class on activities, you're picking up something which is not sensitive to a particular culture. You understand that you are not reflecting onto a particular culture or background in particular, and here you are looking at making sure consciously you pick up examples which are going to be neutral, or which are not going to be, let's say, discriminatory to a particular type of values or beliefs which a learner or a child essentially, comes from. And in such cases, what you're looking at primarily doing is ensuring that you have a bit of a prior knowledge in terms of the background of your students or children in the class, and that would allow you to understand these cultural sensitivity requirements from a point of view of making sure that the children and kids or students, whichever way you put it, they feel safe and they feel that they are able to express their opinions about their culture or where they come from and what values they believe in, and that would be involving what is called cultural sensitivity. You look at emotional support. Sometimes you have students or children essentially who need emotional support because of their mental health issues, and in such cases you would primarily be looking at ensuring that some of the say for example inclusive classroom teaching strategies that you include does not put stress on these children and learners or students. And here, if you feel that they have this particular disability or they need special attention, then you speak to relevant people or authorities within your own educational setup, wherein people who are equipped and better capable in terms of managing these issues are brought in to be able to, provide support, advice, and guidance, and that would provide emotional support. So, in some cases, when you look at emotional support, it tends to be, for example, if you have children, who are coming from, say, single parents, sometimes you would see that they do not understand certain perspectives because they haven't met their father or they haven't seen their mother for a while. And in such cases, you would see children require, I would say, emotional support in certain situations. And that is where you see the need for additional resources like counselors or counseling services and mental health, hotlines that we have. And that is where you would generally see that these kind of students would need that additional support to feel safe in the class. And that is where this emotional support part of the aspect comes in. You see the aspect of physical environment simply because of the fact that the infrastructure sometimes within places, might not be suitable for people which have disabilities. If the school or some of the places do not have, say, for example, a wheelchair ramp or abilities, let's say some kids with disabilities are not able to participate because of the limitation in the infrastructure, that could create, some sort of let's say, a barrier with the students not being able to participate or children not being able to participate in certain activities. And again, to create a safe environment, what most authorities and places do in such contexts is if they have learners with disability or wheelchair access or any sort of thing, disability which prohibits them to participate in those activities, there would be additional support which is normally provided. And, these barriers are some of these barriers which can prohibit the participation in those activities are removed with the use of additional resources, or sometimes when you look at people providing these additional resources or additional help within those areas to learners when they participate in such activities. And this allows them to again feel safe, motivated, and obviously because of the physical environment, these barriers they are able to overcome these barriers, and that is where it allows them to give you to give them equal opportunities as far as providing them a safe and inclusive environment is concerned. It could also be sometimes be put in terms of emotional support. You look at things like bullying, harassment, those kind of things also need to be rooted out. And in some cases, if you get if you get a wind of it that this is something which is happening with this particular learner or this particular student, then you are expected to inform relevant people who would then step in and take action, and that would also make the learners feel safe as far as the learning environment is concerned. And obviously, teachers are trained to pick up, when we do our trainings in terms of safeguarding equality and diversity, discrimination, inclusivity, what we then tend to do is in our trainings, we are told how do we pick up and see the telltale signs of if this is happening, then how do we spot that and who do we bring it to the notice of, so that we are able to contribute, one, to having them disbanded or remove these activities, and the second is with this child or with the student or the children which are facing this, how do we make them feel safe that this is not going to happen, or they should not be they should not feel threatened, they should feel safe. And the idea is to put these things in place to ensure that they feel safe and they feel that they are in an environment which is obviously conducive for them. It is also looking at making them I would say keeping them away, let's put it this way, from conflicting situations. Is that okay? So here the idea is to talk about 3 or 4 main points in terms of how you would look at building a safe, inclusive learning environment as far as the classroom is concerned. The last part is looking at your own practice and giving an example in terms of how you would create a safe and inclusive learning environment using the behavioral theories again. So here, what I would suggest is when we look at the 4 or 5 theories that are put in, which essentially directly help us in better managing the class or essentially in classroom management, what I would do is primarily use 1 or 2 of those theories and see how I can actually use them in my own area of practice when I do teaching and learning or delivery of teaching and learning. And that is what I've done in my cases. I've given examples of the behaviorist theory wherein I use the basic principles of, if I go back to this particular table wherein I'd done this. So how do I look at, ensuring that I get the positive outcomes from my learners in terms of reinforcing the behavior, which is both from an internal and external environment. So the idea here is to create an environment which will, allow my learners to essentially show positive, outcomes, and positive outcomes would be rewarded, and obviously negative behaviors would be discouraged, and there could be penalties or obviously let's say repercussions, because what you're trying to do is reinforce the let's say the stated and the expected expectations. Basically, you are reinforcing them because they've been set as what is called rules for the class, and that is what you would use when I give an example of behaviorist theory. So here, using that in my own discipline, what I tend to do is try and engage with students or learners constructively by doing some discussion in the class, showing some videos, doing a bit of quiz activities, and this would allow them to improve their skills and obviously participate, or create an environment wherein they would want to participate and feel motivated to participate. And this is where I would see that in some cases, sometimes when I carry out these sessions, I would normally have a lot of discussion happening, a lot of question answer session happening, a lot of learners raising a lot of questions because they become open to asking these questions simply because they have doubts, and these doubts can be clarified when they ask these questions, and this creates what is called a positive learning environment. The other one was the CBT, which I can relate to. And I've given examples of, try to give examples and relate to every theory, but you might not need to do so for all of them. What I would suggest is 2 or 3 theories that you generally use always and you can relate to are the ones that you would normally pick up and obviously show how these are applicable for you in terms of your own practice. How do these theories help you create a safe and an inclusive teaching environment? And then give an example in terms of how it helps you manage behaviors of your students, children, learners by by understanding the application of this particular theory for this task. Is that okay?
Mhm.
That would bring us to the end of this particular learning outcome, which is to look at understanding the theories, then understanding what is safe and inclusive learning environment and how these theories help in creating a safe and inclusive learning environment. And towards the end, what we are looking at doing is reflecting these theories in our own practice area and showing that these are the ones which closely relate to how I teach and deliver in the classroom, and they help me in maintaining a safe, inclusive learning environment, which is progressive, which is engaging, which is interactive, which keeps my learners or my children or the kids motivated, and it avoids any conflicting situations, and it allows me to get the expected behaviors which I would want because of the aims and objectives I want to fulfill by teaching and delivering to my lesson plan. Okay.
Yep, I'm all good, I think. So will you upload that summary you were talking about earlier?
Yeah, I'll give you the handout from the University of Cumbria, which is primarily looking at all these 3 different theories, which is cognitive learning theories, social behavioral, social learning theories, and behaviorist theories. And you could look at that as a bit of a synopsis for the purposes of seeing which ones do you think are applicable to your classroom management.
Yeah, so you'll upload that onto Moodle.
Yeah, we'll do that.
So which applicable to my setting? Yep, no, that would be great.
Good stuff. So we'll meet up tomorrow for discussing learning outcome 4. I think in terms of, because it has got a number of assessment criteria, so predominantly the session could be an hour and a half long, but the idea would be to try and cover that up so we can actually reach to learning outcome 5 by Monday. And there are
no,
2
that
or
sounds
3
good to
more.
me.
Yeah. No worries.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thanks, Roman. I'll see you tomorrow
Tomorrow
at 10.
at 10. Yep.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.